Good evening, everyone. I have 6:30. Today is Tuesday, July 19th. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Columbus City Council Common Committee of the Whole special meeting. And with that, if our clerk, Pat Gable, could take the roll call.
Albright? Here. Arnold? Here. Gray?
Present.
Motive?
Present.
Reed?
Here.
Rolke?
Present.
Steiner?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. This meeting was properly noticed. So next up is to approve the agenda. If I don't have any discussion or alterations, I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Alder Motive will second.
I have a motion from Mayor Arnold and a second from Alder Motive to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right, the agenda is approved. Next up is for citizen comments. Molly, did you want to speak now or for the regular?
So you can wait for me.
Okay. Was there anyone that didn't get a chance to sign up that wanted to speak for our special? Seeing none, moving right along. Next up is item number 5 to review and discuss the combined utility ordinance. So if you've noticed in your packet, you have 2 separate ordinances because there was a little bit of discrepancy between the last 2 meetings on which direction the council wanted to go. The first one in your packet, if they're organized in the same way that mine are, is the one that has the superintendent that reporting to the administrator. The second one would have the superintendent reporting only to the committee. Those are, from my understanding, that's the only real difference between the 2. So tonight we just need to find a direction on which one the council would like to move forward to the regular meeting. Does anyone have any comments on which one they would like to move forward?
I do. The new one, the one that has the superintendent reporting to the commission.
Thank you, Alder Albright. Any other?
I would say that the superintendent should actually report to either the council or to the administrator itself, as we are the governing body over the department itself. It should come back to us or the administrator, depending on which way the council wants to go for efficiency purposes. Because otherwise, they're completely autonomous and they still are a department of the city itself.
Thank you. So you would prefer them reporting to the administrator?
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Alder Reed.
Thank you. I'm still comfortable having them report to the commission. I, do want to make sure that they are making reports and updates to the administrator to be shared with council, but for the chain of command, I want to go into the commission.
Thank you, Alder Reed.
I think Alder Motive had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Alder Motive, go ahead.
I really want to continue to have the discussion towards the city administrator. The superintendent should report to the city administrator, just like every other department head within the city. This has been the recommendation from the 3rd set of consultants. And I think it's a foolish waste of money for this council not to act on the consultants' recommendations. And we're wasting taxpayer money to continue to do those studies and not take their recommendations to change the culture within our city.
I do think that the superintendent should report to the administrator, but I also think that that's the one portion of that should change. The rest of it should be as previously discussed, where the commission continues and stormwater and wastewater, stormwater eventually and wastewater, just move over under the umbrella of the commission.
Thank you. We're discussing. The only difference between the two, all the operations, everything would still fall under the commission for the most part. It would just be the superintendent would report to the administrator is the only difference between the two versions. So Alder Albright and Alder Reed would prefer it to stay solely under the commission. And then I have Alder Motive, Rolke, and Steiner that would prefer the administrator. So it sounds correct. Did you want to weigh in at all, Mayor Arnold?
I agree with Alder Steiner and Motive. I think the day-to-day operations should stay, under the superintendent with the oversight by the commission. But I do believe that the superintendent should report to the city administrator. As Alder Motive said, that's the way every other department in the city does it. It would increase, my understanding is some efficiencies. It would save the there'd be, there wouldn't be duplication of services. So I think that's the way to go too.
Thank you, Mayor Arnold. So that is a consensus to move forward the version where the superintendent reports to the administrator. Are there any more questions or comments? Alder Reed?
Oh, no, I just have a question on what sort of savings or lack of duplication would come about by having the superintendent report to the administrator. I just don't understand where the savings come from.
Part of it is we are moving wastewater over to the commission. If there is no direct involvement with city staff, then we would lose, I think it's about $160,000 a year of revenue. So for cost savings in that manner, that's a direct amount of money, is about $160,000 a year would be lost if they report solely to the commission.
Can you explain that a little bit? What is that? What is that money?
I am definitely not the best person to explain that.
So who can explain that then, Kyle?
Sure. So the city as an organization has a variety of functions that it provides, whether it's human resources or the clerk staff that support the city council and all the departments that need access to the city council, the treasurer's staff. All those are supported by a variety of departments, and including the wastewater utility. And so as you look at if the wastewater utility has no reporting to the city council anymore, and it's just through the commission, I would anticipate that they would follow suit and not fund the clerk anymore, not fund the deputy treasurer anymore for the work that goes into running the city, because that would match how the current setup is with water and electric. And so, those costs would then have to be spread out over the other existing departments that would remain.
Does that help? Go ahead, Alder Albright.
So, Kyle, can you explain how the setup is right now? So what happens now?
Sure. So as the city, we have all these departments that collectively we contribute to fund the operations. Like I said, the clerk staff, the treasurer staff, the administrator. And wastewater pays a significant portion of that. And, every time something comes before the commission, or sorry, not the commission, the city council, the operation that supports the city council costs money. And currently, Water and Light doesn't pay for the clerk staff. They pay a portion of the administrator's salary and a portion of the treasurer's salary. They don't pay a portion of the deputy treasurer's salary or the other staff that kind of help make this happen, like human resources, processing the benefits and things like that. So I think that's really what we're looking at, and currently it's not distributed equally because there's a disparity in the structure between the Water and Light Commission and the city. They're really operating kind of like two different organizations in several of those areas.
I am sorry, I am still confused on the process of how they are now going to fund what they haven't been funding for the wages of the staff used.
We would be losing the wastewater funding.
So we'll, to accommodate that, we'll either have to eliminate staff and lay off staff or transition staff potentially to Water and Light and expand their staff, but that's not been, kind of worked out. With the initial design being the closer integration was the impetus of the study. And, I think as we've walked through this issue, we've moved away from some of those things. So if we aren't funding those positions with the wastewater utility and providing those services, then that funding I would anticipate would go away as well.
Does that make sense? So currently with wastewater, the city provides those services. If the city no longer provides them, that would no longer partially fund those salaries. So we would have a discrepancy and need to figure out how to come up with that money or start laying off city employees. Is that more of what? But with all of that said, we do still have a consensus to move forward with the superintendent reporting to the administrator, all other items remaining the same for reporting to the commission. It would just be the superintendent reporting. So if there's no further discussion or questions, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Alder Steiner, a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion from
I'll
Alder
second that.
Steiner, or a motion from Alder Motive, and a second from Alder Steiner to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we stand adjourned.
Here tonight for the Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 regular meeting of the Columbus, Wisconsin City Council. Our city clerk, Pat Gable, will now take the roll.
Arnold,
Present.
Gray,
Present?
Motive,
Present.
Reed,
Here.
Rolke,
Present.
Steiner,
Here.
Albright,
Here.
all present.
Great. And if you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. And now I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Alder Gray moves to approve the agenda.
Alder Steiner will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve tonight's agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we do have, I think, Paula, did you want to, we have Paula Steiner signed up to take part in the communications. You push a little thing.
Sound waves coming out, kind of middle.
Yep, you got it. Oh, no, it's
Oh, you
off.
had it? There you go.
I lightly touched it, I swear.
Was messing with it.
Oh. All right, Paula Steiner, 442 West James Street. I just kind of wanted to come here and make two specific comments to the council tonight. The first and foremost is in direction towards DPW. I don't know if all of you know this, but I was heavily involved with the flowers in the downtown area, and to see that be continued on year after year, I think DPW is doing a phenomenal job in maintaining them and taking care of them, and it's really appreciated because there was a lot of hours that went into that discussion, so a big thank you there. The other part, and I know this is on the committee of the whole, but I kind of want to get back to my children, so is in reference to the ATV, UTV referendum that was discussed at the last meeting. I am not in support of a referendum. I personally think that you guys are here elected to serve in the best interest of all of your constituents, and I think a referendum is kind of a waste of resources when you guys can make that decision right now, and Attorney Johnson already drafted the ordinance. That stuff could be adjusted based off of conversation, and you could move on from the whole ordeal. So I would definitely be in support of moving forward with an ordinance versus going the referendum route. And that's it.
Paula, I just want to thank you for the kind words for DPW. It's so nice to hear a compliment, and I really appreciate your comments, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, now I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Alder Steiner will move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Alder Motif will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve tonight's consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Now we're going to move on to new business. The first item, let's see, under new business tonight is to consider and take action on the CSA, which is the Columbus Softball Association donation proposal for Diamond One dugout wrap for Cardinal Pride at Meister Park. And this is something we've talked about before, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the donation.
Alder Gray.
We'll move to approve the donation from the CSA for the Diamond One dugout wrap for Cardinal Pride at Meister Park.
Gray will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve the Columbus Softball Association donation for the Diamond One dugout wrap. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Moving on to number 2 on the agenda tonight, I just want to, first of all, let you, I think I've told both of you guys, I cannot hear out of this ear. So if I don't hear if I maybe don't hear you say something, that's the reason why I'm not ignoring you. Okay, so the second item on tonight's agenda is to consider and take action on repealing and/or recreating the combined utility ordinance, which we just discussed in the committee of the whole. And so I am looking for a motion.
Alder Motif will make a motion to approve the ordinance that combines the utilities. And do I need to put further note on that? I'm sorry.
Alder Motif, we need to start to go that direction. We just need to start with a motion to suspend the rules.
I'm sorry, I should have made, I've got a cheat sheet here and I didn't have it right in front of me. And I'm sorry, that is absolutely correct. The first thing we need to do regarding passing the ordinance is to have a motion to suspend the rules.
Alder Motif will make a motion to suspend the rules.
Is there a second?
Alder Gray will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we suspend the rules. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, then the second thing we need to vote on is a motion to waive the reading of the ordinance. Otherwise, I guess we would be reading 40 pages and and since we all have it in our packet and are familiar with it, I am looking for a motion to waive the reading of the ordinance.
Alder Steiner will motion to waive reading of the ordinance.
Alder Motive will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we waive the reading of the ordinance. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so then, now we get down to the point where we have a motion to adopt the ordinance, and I'm looking here at the information I got from Paul. Okay, I think I'll just let him take over.
If you are going to vote on either one of the options in front of you tonight, the first thing, this should be a two-part motion. You're basically repealing the existing Chapter 102 of the City Code, and you are then replacing it with whichever option you are going to vote in favor of tonight. So it's a motion to repeal and replace Chapter 102 of the code.
So the motion would be to repeal and replace Chapter 102 of the municipal code?
Yes, and then specify whichever option you're going to use here.
Okay, and since during the COW, we just decided on the option that we came up with at June 21st, so would that be?
Which, for specificity purposes, I would suggest the version that has the utility superintendent reporting to the city administrator.
So that should be.
Because that's the big significant difference between the two versions.
Okay, so that should be included in the motion. So everybody got that? Were you taking notes? Okay.
And it can just be one motion, correct?
Yes.
Repeal and, it just has to be stated repeal and replace.
Yes.
Alder Motive, you have a question?
I was going to make a motion.
Take it away.
I'd like to make a motion to repeal Chapter 102 Utilities Ordinance and to replace it with the new updated 102 ordinance that has the superintendent reporting to the city administrator.
So it has been moved. Do I have a second?
Alder Steiner will second.
It has been moved and seconded to repeal Chapter 102 of the municipal code and replace it with, I want to make sure I get this right, replace it with Code 102 that has the Columbus Utility Superintendent reporting to the city administrator. Okay. So all those in favor, is there any further discussion?
Can we do a name vote on this?
Sure, you want to do a roll call?
Yeah,
sure.
please.
Gray,
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Rolke,
Aye.
Steiner,
Aye.
Albright,
Nay.
Arnold. Sorry, she can't
Oh,
vote.
I don't think I
Never mind, sorry.
It's okay. So motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, under number 3, is to consider and take action on the preliminary funding plans for debt issuances. And this was something that was gone over at our last meeting in July. Information is all in your packet, submitted by City Treasurer Brandon Bledsoe. And so I am looking for a motion to approve the preliminary funding plans for the debt issuance.
Alder Gray moves to approve the preliminary funding options for the debt issuance.
Alder Albright will second that.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve the preliminary funding plans for debt issuance. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me? Do we have to do roll call? I don't believe we do because, or do we?
On this one, I don't know that we do because this is just the general data. On the resolutions, I'll defer to Paul.
Yeah, I think all the other resolutions we will. Is that right, Paul? Okay. But good point, no problem. So, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we will move on to many resolutions. Number 4 is to continue and take action on resolution number 9-22, an initial resolution authorizing $840,000 in general obligation bonds for street improvement projects. And so,
Alder, oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry, Alder Motive has her hand up.
oh, okay, sorry. Alder Motive.
Alder Motive would like to make a motion to approve Resolution 922 authorizing $840,000 in general obligation bonds for street improvement projects.
Alder Gray will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number 9-22. And we will do is there any discussion? Okay, we will do a roll call on this then.
Motive,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Rolke,
Aye.
Steiner,
Aye.
Albright,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
motion carries.
Great. We're moving on now to number 9, which is to consider and take action on resolution number 10-22, initial resolution authorizing $370,000 general obligation bonds for equipment for the fire department.
Alder Rolke moves to approve resolution 10-22, initial resolution authorizing $370,000 general obligation bonds for equipment for the fire department.
Reed will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number 10-22. Is there any discussion? And we will do a roll call on this also.
Reed,
Aye.
Rolke,
Aye.
Steiner,
Aye.
Albright,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
motion carries.
Great. Moving on now to number 6 is to consider and take action on resolution number 11-22, initial resolution authorizing $160,000 general obligation bonds for sewerage projects.
Alder Steiner will make a motion to approve resolution 11-22, authorizing $160,000 in general obligation bonds for sewage projects.
Alder Albright will second that.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number 11-22, and we will do a roll call on this.
Rolke,
Aye.
Steiner,
Aye.
Albright,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
motion carries.
Great, thank you so much. And now we're moving on to number 7, which is to consider and take action on resolution number 12-22, a resolution directing publication of notice to electors to bond issues.
Alder Albright can make a motion to approve resolution 12-22, resolution directing publication to notice to electors to bond issues.
Alder Rolke will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number 12-22. Do we need a roll call on this one? We're not actually.
Probably not, but you probably should anyway.
All right, in that case, we will.
Steiner,
Aye.
Albright,
Aye.
Arnold, sorry, Gray,
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Rolke,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay, we're moving on now to number 8, consider and take action on resolution number 13-22, resolution providing for the sale of not to exceed $1,370,000 in general obligation corporate bonds, Series 2022B.
Alder Gray moves to approve Resolution 13-22, a resolution providing for the sale of not to exceed $1,370,000 general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2022B.
Alder Albright can second that.
Alder Motive, second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number 13-22, and we'll do a roll call on this also.
Albright,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Rolke,
Aye.
Steiner.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we are down to number 9. Consider and take action on resolution number 14-22, a resolution providing for the sale of approximately $2,650,000 sewerage system revenue bonds, Series 2022A.
Alder Motive will make a motion to approve Resolution 1422, providing for the sale of approximately $2,650,000 in sewer system revenue bonds, Series 2022A.
Alder Gray seconds.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number 14-22, and we'll do a roll call on this.
Gray,
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Rolke,
Aye.
Steiner,
Aye.
Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, now we are going down to item number 10 on the agenda, which is to consider and take action on the Community Development Authority's request to develop American Rescue Plan funds. And this was something we discussed, I believe, at our last meeting in July. And it's, they're requesting permission to develop plans for the use of these funds in our community, and if allowed to create these plans, they would still need to bring them back to the city council for approval. So we are considering their request to develop plans for these funds. So I am looking for a motion.
Alder Gray moves to approve the CDA's request to develop ARPA plans.
Alder Rolke will second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve the request from the CDA to develop ARPA plans. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now, anybody opposed? Okay. Number 11 is to consider and take action on the DPW organizational change. Let's see. And I know I looked this over before the meeting.
The street superintendent.
It's the street superintendent. Kyle, can you maybe just give us a little background on this?
Yes, so this is, again, a result of the organizational study and the recommended move to a position more in line with a street superintendent position. And we've been now advertising that draft since the last meeting. So this would formalize that and let us, when the hiring time comes, use this job description.
Okay, thank you so much. So I am looking for a motion to approve the DPW organizational change.
Alder Albright can make a motion to approve the DPW organizational change.
Alder Gray will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve the DPW organizational change. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, the next item is to review the, is to take action on the Hillside Cemetery Secretary job description. We have a draft in front of us which describes the position. And I am looking, I know we talked about this at our last meeting, so. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Just a question on the wage range that we had discussed last time. I see it's still listed as 100 per week, and we had talked about how it would be more appropriate and more likely more legal to have an actual wage per hour.
Yes, and that was one area that there was a couple ideas suggested, and we never locked in on a certain area. If it's an hourly position, you should have an hourly wage, but there are also positions that stipends are allowable for ceremonial duties and things like that. But if you want to lock in on a specific salary that or hourly wage, that would be this would be the time to do it.
Excuse
Thank you.
me.
Oh, so Trina's
I
still.
was going to finish.
We came to an agreement at the last meeting, I believe it was like $19 an hour, is that sound familiar
It's
to
16 to
other
18,
council
but I
members?
might want to remind her Trina's.
Oh, I was still having a turn, but yes, that's what I was going to say. We had come to a decision at the last meeting. We had decided on 16 to 18. I would be comfortable with 16 to 19. And then were we looking at up to 10 hours?
I believe that was the consensus. Yeah.
Okay, so we are talking, do you want to make this like into a motion that's a little more specific then? Is that what you're kind of looking for tonight, you think?
Oh, well, first I just wanted to review our verbal agreement from last time.
Okay. But would you like to see us, like, would you like this particular action item be more specific when we vote on it? Okay, so do you want to put together a motion and provide?
Reed would like to approve the new position description for the Hillside Cemetery Secretary with the change of the wage range of $16 to $19 per hour up to 10 hours weekly.
Alder Gray will second.
Great. Thank you for that, Trina. So it has been moved and seconded that we approve the Hillside Cemetery Secretary job description with the stipulation that the wage range would be from $16 to $19 per hour for up to 10 hours a week. Okay. Is there a second?
I did.
Oh, you did second. I'm so sorry. Okay. Now, because we're spending money, roll call on this one? Okay, so we will do a roll call.
Gray,
Aye.
Motive,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Rolke,
Aye.
Steiner,
Aye.
Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for clarifying. To be honest with you, that part of the meeting in July just kind of floated away for me. Item number 13 is to approve the DPW hire to replace the retiring employee. I think you will remember that city was notified that we are having a retirement in DPW effective in December. This is going to leave a vacancy leading into the winter road maintenance season. And so the council is being asked to approve the hiring of a new maintenance worker to take the place of an employee that plans to retire in December.
Alder Gray moves to approve hiring the DPW maintenance worker ahead of the retirement.
Alder Steiner.
You'll second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we do approve the DPW hire to replace the retiring employee, and we will do a roll call on this one, I believe. Is that right? No? Paul says no. I have it written here that
I
we're
have
supposed
to
to.
sit this one out because I'm related to the person.
Okay, yeah. So we don't have to do a roll call.
You are always able to do one, but you don't need to do it here.
All right. Okay, well, in that case, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. The next item on the agenda is to approve the claims. Consider and take action on claims in the amount of $184,671.30. So I am looking for a motion to approve the claims.
Alder Albright can make a motion to approve the claims in the amount read of $184,671.30.
Alder Motive can second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we approve the claims in the amount read, and we will do a roll call on this one.
Motive?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Roki?
Aye.
Steiner?
Aye.
Albright?
Aye.
Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the last item on our agenda is the report, well, before we adjourn, is the report of city officers, and I will let our city administrator go first.
All right, thank you. A couple items. We've been advertising the draft job descriptions for the street superintendent and the cemetery secretary, and we've had several people applying. So the interest in those positions has been good, and we hope that continues. So we're hoping to have a good group to interview, and that closes then on Monday, the 25th. So we still have a little bit less than a week for anyone interested to throw their hat in the ring. Just a sort of a heads up that there's been some renewed interest in the auditorium recently with a local group that's sort of forming to try to gather some information on the renovations. They're getting some information on what it would take to conduct a historical structure report so that they would be able to understand the general conditions and what would have to be done to renovate the facility. So really nothing for you to do at this point, but I guess just kind of have an awareness that we may be seeing more information on this at a future meeting if they get to the point that they want to conduct a study. I think that is the time that we need to start, getting a lot more formal about what exactly we're doing and what they'll be allowed to do. But right now it's just exploratory on their side about how to even get going. But I think it's always encouraging to have interest in things like that. So the other item I wanted to mention was that the summer concert series continues next week. That's on Thursday, July 28th. That's, I think, 9:30 standard is the band. Vendors start at 5. Music is 6 to 8 in Fireman's Park. And then finally, just a reminder that our next meeting will be on a Monday, August 1st, so that we can celebrate National Night Out, which is on August 2nd. So I'll see you here in 13 days, not 14. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Kyle. I want to remind everybody, as I do every time we meet, that tomorrow is the farmer's market. It's going to be a really nice day, so please stop down and show your support. They're located right downtown, 150 North Leadington. They start, I think, around 3, and they go till 6 or 6:30. And while you're downtown, visit one of the, businesses, that maybe one of the new ones that just opened up recently. We have, our downtown is busier and busier all the time. I also want to remind people it's going to be warm next week. The senior center, the community center, and the public library are all open to people who need a respite from the heat. And speaking of the senior center, Director Kim Lang would like me to remind people that the 4th Tuesday of every month, there is a caregiver support group that meets at the senior center in their media room, which they call the gathering place. It meets from 9 to 11 in the morning. This is for anybody who is in a caregiving kind of position, and they provide a free continental breakfast, and it's an opportunity to share experiences and maybe hear a speaker and take part in group discussions. They also have a program Mondays and Wednesdays at 1 o'clock, an exercise program. It's called a Parkinson's Friendly Exercise Program, but it's open for anybody who wants to come in and exercise. The rec department has some interesting things going on at the pool. Amy Jo Myers let me know that Friday is family beach night, and that starts at 6, goes till 9. Rubber duck races, you can win prizes, games, music by DJ Steve. It's $3 admission for that event. Kids under two and under get in for $1. And if you are a member of CAAC, you get in free. And I encourage you to check the rec department Facebook page and the senior center page for more information about all the programs that they have going on. Kyle mentioned that Tuesday, August 2nd is National Night Out at Fireman's Park, 5:30 to 8. I attended last year. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think we had the chance last year to dunk the fire chief. Is that going to happen again this year, you think? Okay. And then, you get to see representatives from other departments in the city. It's a really great program. And so if you show up here on Tuesday night for August 2nd for City Council, you will be a day late because we're going to meet the night before so that all of us can go take part in that. And I just want to let people know now that we have passed the Utilities Commission. If you are interested as a citizen in serving on the Columbus Utilities Commission, please go to the city website. I think you look on the mayor page and you will see a form that you can fill out if you're interested in being considered for the commission. And that's all that I have tonight. And so I am now looking for a motion to adjourn.
Alder Gray moves to adjourn.
Alder Steiner will second.
So it has been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. We're adjourned.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I have 7:23. Today is Tuesday, July 19th. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole regular meeting. With that, if our city clerk, Pat Gable, could take a roll call.
Albright.
Here.
Arnold. Here. Gray.
Present.
Motive.
Present.
Reed.
Here.
Roki.
Present.
Steiner.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. This meeting was properly noticed, so next up on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Any discussion or alterations? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we,
We'll move to approve tonight's agenda.
Alder Albright can second.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Alder Rolke and 2 seconds from Alder Motive and Alder Albright. All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, agenda is approved. Next up is citizen comments. We have a couple people signed up tonight, starting with Molly Finkler.
Great. Awesome. I haven't been up here before, so I say my name and address.
Yes, please.
Okay. Molly Finkler, 464 Highview Lane. And I just had a couple comments that I wanted to make on the ATV, UTV referendum that's up for discussion tonight. I do agree with Paula that I believe that that referendum is not a good use of resources, and that an ordinance has been drafted. It needs some tweaking from what I have reviewed, but it is something that I believe is doable to move forward with, and there's really no reason to take it to a referendum and use those resources. One of the other comments that I have to make is that I really disagree with the options of allowing all the city streets open or just developing a route through the city. I'm not sure what that even means, if it, what defines the route through the city, what defines usage, but as a taxpayer and a resident, I feel that it really limits me and my ability to benefit from the ATV and UTV route. I don't own one currently, but I would buy one if this was approved. And I'm a rule follower, as I'm sure many other mature adults are that would be driving an ATV or UTV. What you see in the videos on the trails is not what you see in cities that allow ATVs and UTVs. And as a resident, I don't want to have to buy a trailer. I have a truck, thankfully, but I don't want, if somebody wants to have an ATV or UTV to use to go to the grocery store to save some money on fuel, or just to, have a fun way to get out of the house and have a new way to travel, they're restricted to buying a $70-some thousand truck, a trailer, plus the ATV, plus the UTV. Also, residents would help with any local insurance companies, because if they're buying an ATV, UTV, they're going to want to insure it. It is an investment. It will help with the bars, the restaurants, the coffee shops, the gas stations, grocery stores. It just would help, the farmers market, bringing more people to the farmers market. I can tell you right now, if I had a fun way to go to the farmers market as a resident, I would go to it in my ATV before I would choose to go to it in my car. I don't know why, but it's just a fun reason to get out of the house in my ATV. You know what I mean? So I think those things need to be considered. And I just think the whole concerns about safety is, if we're gonna only allow one path through the city, you're gonna have a bottleneck at those potential entry and exit points of people trying to park trailers and trucks. And if that happens to align with any residential area, if there's such a safety concern of ATVs and UTVs, why would you shove all of that concern into one location instead of spreading that concern out throughout the city? And then you're going to lessen the problem. And I can tell you that the resident streets are going to be utilized for me as a resident to get to and from these other trails and these other businesses. And if you only allow that path through, you're taking that opportunity away from me as a taxpayer and giving that opportunity to folks that don't even pay taxes in our city. I'm happy to have their business for our businesses, but what about us as taxpayers? We really should have that ability to benefit from that also. And we have also heard, I don't know how long I get to talk, so you're gonna have to cut me off because I'll ramble forever. But I only have a couple more points, I promise.
1 more minute.
you. And the other thing that I had heard, because I'm very active about this, as some of you may recognize the name, police and patrol, I have read many people saying that it is wanted to have all the cities open for those patrolling the city, because really trying to concentrate in certain areas are going to take the police officers away from patrolling the rest of the city to make extra patrols in that area, because there is going to be bottlenecks. And I, for one, love when I see the police officers driving down my residential street, and they drive down quite frequently. And if that is taken away and concentrating to these bottlenecked areas, then I am going to miss that opportunity of feeling safe in my neighborhood and having that patrol occurring general. And I think that's all.
All right. Thank you, Molly. Just to clarify before you head out, so we were discussing opening it to all streets. Is it my understanding that you are speaking for the potential referendum questions? You would like it to not be worded with the word route, just opening it up to all the streets so citizens understand that it would be all streets, and then we get rid of that misconception?
I would prefer no referendum at all and go straight to the ordinance and tweak that ordinance and, put, I think the word was sunsetting, put a time frame within there. We're going to approve this ordinance for this period of time, and then we will reassess it. And if at that point we have no problems, then let's extend it further. But if there is problems, let's address it, because I don't want our town to turn into a bunch of people doing donuts on the road, slamming Busch lattes, which that's not going to happen. And I would love if we could just have a compromise and allow it for that period of time to see that those stereotypes are wrong.
Thank you very much, Molly.
Yep.
Then next up we have Jacob Bones. Bones, sorry.
Hello, everybody. Jacob Bonas, 320 Richmond Street. I'm here to talk about ATV, UTV usage. Like she said, kind of against the referendum idea. I'd like to see the ordinance that's been presented kind of tweaked and worked on a little more, because I think it's a great solid start we have going for sure. But if it does end up going referendum idea, definitely would be in favor of opening up all the streets, just being a taxpayer and being able to utilize our streets that we pay for the purpose of getting in and out of town, visiting other cities, spending money elsewhere, and also allowing other people to come into our city to spend money as well. I have snowmobiles, motorcycle, ATV, a lot of toys. And when I jump on that, I know I'm going for fun. I'm going to spend money. And I do that in other places all over the state. And I think we should be able to give that opportunity to other people to come to our city to do that same thing. I've also been in contact. We're lucky to have a DNR warden that lives in town. And he has voiced to me he has no problems talking to the police station, helping the officers get up to speed on regulations, or just, hey, give me a call. If you got a question about this, he will answer. And I guess if it does go to a referendum, there's been a long-standing ordinance in place already that allows private citizens and businesses the use of ATVs, UTVs for snow removal purposes. If it does go south with the referendum, will that be changing that ordinance? Because myself and a lot of other people, including businesses, utilize that asset to help our neighbors, friends, family, and there is currently no restrictions on streets. Any use, within 2 miles of your drop zone, you can go. And like I said, since 2012 or a little after that, it's been in effect, and as far as I know, there has been 0 issues. And that's private citizens, businesses doing this. And I guess also on the same effect, I do work for the city. I was at DPW, and we do utilize it at Water and Light. There is currently 2 UTVs that the city does own that are used as transportation, weed control, they plow snow just like I use my other 4. Would that be also affected if the ordinance doesn't pass? Or if there is just a route, would they be sticking to just the route? Or will they get their exceptions? Because I don't see that as fair for me as a taxpayer. So I appreciate you guys, everybody going forward with this and talking about it, at least giving it a shot. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. And to clarify, are you requesting that the referendum question, because that is what we're discussing tonight, is the
I would definitely be open to the whole city.
And are you requesting it to specify that it would be for recreational or average? I don't even know how to word that, but somehow not including the utility use that's already available?
I mean, I would prefer to still be able to use it for snow removal because that is a pretty important purpose for me. I guess you guys have to hash that out if that's going to be a blanket effect or this or that, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. And next up, we have Joe Hammer.
Hi, Joe Hammer, 162 East School Street. Pretty much concur with everything that the other 2 people have said. If it does go to a referendum, it should be all city streets. I think a referendum is by far the most ridiculous thing I have heard. So you need to stay away from that. You need to just follow through with it and tweak the ordinance as previously stated. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Was there anyone that didn't get a chance to sign up that wishes to speak? Seeing none, then moving right on to item number 5, that is the department reports. In your packets, you will find the reports from the DPW, the fire station, the library, Lifestar, police, and treasurer reports. Are there any questions? Oh, go ahead, Alder Albright.
So, and this is actually for Kyle. Kyle, I have some questions in regards to the funding, but I think it might be more appropriate when we're talking about budgeting. So I would just like to, I have some things marked and I just want to do it during the budgeting part. I think it makes more sense.
Did you have any questions about the report before we approve them?
No.
Okay.
I know.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, then moving right along is the stormwater bypass report, and we have Jason here from Rupert Milky to walk us through that.
Thank you, everybody. I want to just start off by saying I appreciate the patience in pulling this report together. I know we kind of commissioned this last year, and there's been a lot of things going on with the stormwater utility and other discussions regarding stormwater. So we were able to work through this and get some final answers, and we completed the report, so that's in your packet. Hopefully you've read it. I'll hit some highlights in here. If you recall, this was a kind of a follow-up report to the report from last September. Last September's report looked at the options of removing the pipe in the park. It looked at options of dredging upstream and downstream of the park. Looked at some combinations of those things together and how they would affect the water. And as a result, there was some concern, I guess, from the council at the time that we should look a little closer at some additional options before making any decisions on how to move that forward. We know recently with the CBDG, there was a dredging component that we had decided to move forward with. Obviously, that was set back. That was part of the recommendation in the original report. So now on to this report. A couple of the ideas we had talked about were bypass options. Were we able to get water out of this watershed and redirect it into a different portion of the city? And what would that do to the flow or the water surface elevations in the Second Ward Creek area? Would that cause any undue stress on other areas where we were redirecting, and how much water could we redirect and what would make a difference? And so this kind of bypass study or update to the report was set out to kind of answer some of those questions. So we looked at a couple different things. One, we looked at, as a reminder, the alternative of up by Avalon Park by Kestrel Ridge. Could we divert some water out of Second Ward Creek north of the golf course, the country club, and take it towards Kestrel Ridge, Highway 89 area? and get it out of the system. There was kind of a natural channel there that we indicated when the water was high in 2020 that the water did eventually move that way, but the water obviously was very high to force that direct route to go that way. Then we looked at the possibility of taking water lower in the watershed, basically by Kiwanis Park, and running that down through where there's an existing storm sewer, kind of down past William Street and across River Road and down into the river at that location, which is also below the dam. We looked at the UD dam removal option. How much impact would removing the dam have on lowering the water surface elevation at the discharge of Second Ward Creek, and was that causing hindrance to water movement to get out of the creek into the pond area or immediately upstream of the dam? So those were the three main options we looked at. As we kind of did this report, we added a couple other things because we thought, well, who knows? Maybe somebody will ask, well, what happens if we do bypass 1 with the dam removal? What happens if we do bypass 2 with the dam removal? And so we kind of threw those in as well. As long as we had the models prepared and we had all the information, we took a look at those. So in a nutshell, as you read through this, we eventually dismissed Avalon Park option for bypass. We feel like we can get some water out of the system, but it's so flat up there. We were having trouble finding adequate pipes to get gravity flow. That's going to cause us to raise or lower the elevation of Avalon Road. Either we have to raise it to shove bigger pipes under, or we'd have to lower it to allow water to flow over top of it in a high water event, which isn't safe, so we certainly wouldn't recommend that. We also found that we could get water all the way down across 89 to the golf course, but then there's an 8-inch pipe down there that would restrict flow and kind of flood out the farm fields and the golf courses down there. So by introducing this bypass situation, we could get a small amount of water out. We even kind of went as far as looked at, well, could we just physically pump it to help avoid some of those situations? But lift stations are very expensive, or pump stations are very expensive. They have long-term operation and maintenance costs, energy backup. Usually we need to have, generators, because when you need them is when, there are other issues going on. So we've just kind of ruled out bypass option 1 and said, although a novel idea, and nature does that when the water gets really high, it's not something that we felt contributed to a significant enough of an impact to recommend that. The second was the bypass option at Waterloo Street. After reviewing that, we also concluded that that was not a very viable option, just due to the fact that the elevation grade from Waterloo Street all the way to the river is very flat. So our pipes there right now are very flat, so you'd have to have a very large capacity pipe to bypass water. Plus, it's so far down in the Second Ward Creek watershed that we found that removing water down at that point was essentially negligible. The flooding had already occurred. It had already slowed, so to try and siphon that water off at that location just really cost a lot of money to install large diameter pipes. And again, it became pretty much a non-viable option when we're trying to put a 4-foot diameter pipe in the ground when we can only bury it 2 feet deep. Those are the logistics that we kept running into. Then the question becomes, well, could you put 2 24-inch pipes? Well, maybe, but then you get into scenarios where, every time you add a equivalent diameter pipe, you're doubling the cost because you have to lay that amount of pipe. So again, become very expensive. So that option didn't seem to make much sense. The UD dam removal, so we looked at what impact that had, and I'll put one caveat with the dam. We did not look at the dam's influence on the groundwater condition. I mean, we didn't get into the depth of doing hydrology here. So I think there still is a very plausible thought that as the dam holds water back, it promotes a higher groundwater situation, which, for several reasons, probably deters drainage, right? It doesn't allow water to soak in. It probably also has some impact on just general surface water movement. But as we're talking about surface water, removing the dam will have an immediate effect on water surface elevations up and downstream of the dam, maybe by a distance of 1,000 feet. But it would be negligible. What we did realize, and as we kind of go back to this September of 21 report, we did theorize that the culvert under James Street was kind of what we thought at that point kind of the restriction point of a lot of this water. And the reason was, if you remember, when we looked at the concept of dredging upstream, downstream, and removing the pipe and the culvert, all of a sudden now we got a rise in water surface elevation just upstream of James Street, which told us that if we were able to get this water through the system, we were essentially hitting kind of a dam down there where the culverts were holding it back. So under this study, we said, I got to have something meaningful to bring back to you guys, so let's look at the culvert. What would happen if we increase the capacity of the culvert in James Street? So we did run a couple scenarios here to look at increasing that capacity underneath James Street. And I know that we've just rebuilt the street, and I know that we were aware of this back when the street was rebuilt because we discussed it with the DOT and the DNR, and the Department of Transportation at the time had decided to leave the culverts in there. But we looked at what happens if we add a third culvert. There's two there now. What happens if we add a third one and a fourth one? And we did find in the larger storm events, we were able to drop that water surface elevation upstream, probably from James Street almost all the way to School Street. We dropped it, and again, it was a tapering effect. So at James Street, I believe with the fourth culvert, we could drop it almost 8 inches or 9 inches. And then obviously it would taper to nothing back at School Street, just due to the gradient. What does 9 inches give us? 9 inches gives us enough to keep the water from impacting the structures adjacent to the creek at that point. Increasing the culverts on James Street does not fix the flooding in Avalon. It's way too far upstream. It's at a much higher elevation, so that doesn't have an impact. But for sure, through all of this, you know, I'm confidently here saying that James Street is a restriction to the water flow moving through the city. We can document that, we can model it, we can prove that. Finding ways to take water out of Second Ward Creek probably is not a viable option at this point. Finding ways to slow water down before it gets into town, I believe, is still an alternative. And with our new comprehensive study, we're going to look at those impacts. We're going to look at acre feet of storage in some of the agricultural areas upstream. So we're going to continue to look at Second Ward Creek. I know this is kind of a long, arduous process, but it's very complex, and there's a lot of things going on here and a lot of different things that influence or don't influence. And I want to make sure that you and the public have factual information and we're not guessing. And so I would say at this point, the study update gets us closer to knowing those answers. I think it to me, it told us some things that didn't work, but it also verified or confirmed some of the things that we suspected from the original report. So at this point, I'll be quiet and try to answer some questions if you have it. Hopefully you were able to look through the report. I did throw a few nice pictures in there so you can kind of see some of these troubled areas and see some of the different things that we've been talking about as far as sediment and blockages and, you know, impacts to culverts. These pictures were taken actually right after, I think, about a 1-inch rain. So you can kind of see the water's brown, it's fairly high in these pictures, and that's really kind of a state of where the system is still functioning. It hasn't breached any banks, it hasn't impacted any structures. But again, when we see those events more than that 1 or 2 inch, those are the ones where we start to encounter some of these problems in different areas. So anyways, any questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. So a couple quick questions. So, I mean, of course, the study's ongoing. Are there plans to do the hydraulic study to see what the, like, removing the dam's true impact would be? Or would that be a large expense in addition?
Yeah, at that point, I would say we'd have to create a groundwater model, which is a hydrologic engineer, which is essentially going in and doing some monitoring, identifying levels. We'd have to do some borings or some drillings to really, you know, kind of get a grid set up so we knew where those elevations were, and then we could look at topography, and you could set up a model to simulate, you know, water elevations and how that would work if we lowered, say, that immediate area around the dam for the removal. So there is an effort to that. I don't think that's part of the comprehensive study to look at the dam removal or the actual groundwater models in the city, but it is something that can be done. There is obviously expense, of course, to do that, but at this point, a lot of what we're dealing with in my mind is surface water here. The groundwater should have an impact on this. The groundwater will have an impact on a lot of things probably that the city would be interested in, such as I&I in the sewer system and other reasons why lowering it could be beneficial. We just don't know how much lowering or taking out the dam is going to lower that. So again, you know, we may find that it's got a really immediate impact around the dam. Maybe that groundwater impact is only, you know, a block or two within the city, and it doesn't have an outreaching impact. So those are things I don't know that we have the answer to yet. I am finding that a lot of the studies we are showing, at least with the surface water, impacts are very localized. So when we make an improvement somewhere, we remove sediment or increase flood storage capacity in a section, it's really the benefit or the impacts kind of confined to that very closely. So I would go probably out on a limb here saying that even with groundwater, that's probably very true as well, would be my guess.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know which one of you were first.
You can go first.
I haven't lived here long enough as other people, but what was the general purpose of the UD Dam to begin with?
The
It
UD
was a mill
Dam.
back in the day. Yeah, long time ago it was a mill.
It was a mill?
Not a whole lot of purpose.
Yeah, it was
So it's just sort of left over from whole business, okay. I just didn't want to make sure that we're not like destroying something that was there for a purpose outside of, you know, whatever private business was there.
Yeah, it was not in place for flood control or anything like that, so.
So it's used for recreational though?
Right.
Yeah, because you can kayak and stuff over there. Is that your only?
That's all I had.
So I just want to recap, because I actually had to have Kyle recap this. So you aren't actually recommending the Avalon study that we did through the park and doing the culverts there anymore, is that correct?
No, I think the expense and the feasibility of trying to engineer a solution just isn't feasible on the upper end. It's very difficult. And then by introducing this water on the lower end, we would have to probably put in 1,000 or more feet of large diameter pipe through a farm field where we would have to get some type of an easement just to convey water out towards River Road. And now the water all goes there and it does drain. But what I wasn't aware of was there was this restrictive pipe once we get outside the city that kind of does hold the water back. Now, you know, we haven't approached the farmer, but we've certainly talked to the golf course owners, and they've always been supportive of helping the city find a solution to improve stormwater drainage. So I do know that they certainly would be party to finding a way to do that. However, I think there's a lot of issues that would be in the way of doing that. Plus, the benefit that we get out of it is negligible in terms of, I think we indicated that we can lower the surface of the water 6 inches by taking out, or 6 inches or less by taking out 200 cubic feet per second, and those require fairly large diameter pipes. So, like, for instance, I think the one 48-inch pipe in the park handles about 100 cubic feet per second, so we'd have to have twin 48-inch pipes going underneath Avalon Road, which really creates a logistical issue of how to engineer that.
Okay, I have one more question. So then we don't have anything to do with Avalon, and so this culvert thing, now you're doing the comprehensive study. I mean, is this something that's viable that could actually be maybe potentially started, or would the recommendation be to wait till the comprehensive study is done?
I would wait at this point till we're done with the comprehensive study, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this findings into the comprehensive study as a capital improvement that we'll probably recommend in there. And, you know, certainly there will be other things that we will identify and model to help lower that level. One thing that I'm thinking about is the city owns 4 acres of land right out by Enerpac along the highway. Could we use that and remove that material out of there to use that as a flood storage area? I don't know how much. 4 acres, if we dig down several feet, we can maybe get 12, 15 acre feet of storage out there. I just don't know how much that level of flood storage is going to help reduce the water levels in the city. We'll be able to model that, so we'll have a little better idea. And my hope is that we can come back to you with a comprehensive study and say, maybe the box culvert improvement on James Street is secondary priority because it will help. But if we can keep the water out of town and we can recommend maybe improving this flood storage on some of the city property, or even acquire some of the property that's out there that's not buildable, so there are areas out there where it's between wetlands or between low-lying areas where, as by zoning code, we won't allow development on. So could we purchase those or acquire those at a lower rate, potentially from the landowner, and utilize that to increase the flood storage area? I'm really kind of running out of ideas to how to help get the water through the city. Now I'm leaning more towards, can we stop it, as people had suggested, which again is been on the plate all along, but we haven't looked hard enough, I think, at that option to say, how do we retain that water before we get into the city as well. So we'll be looking at that a lot more at the comprehensive study. So I would say, obviously we'll be wrapping that up by October, so hang tight. We should have more answers on that, but I do think this box culvert improvement on James Street has merit, and I think we'll certainly wrap it into that as well, so we can take these findings and reuse them in that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. Any other questions for Jason on that topic? No? Awesome. And then the next up is the task order for the CDBG construction.
Okay, so before you tonight, and I'm sure you read your cover page, the CBDG construction, originally our task order was for the design through the bidding portion of that. As you know, we ended up rebidding that, and we're getting close to beginning construction. We've approved the contracts, but we have not signed them yet. I don't believe you had heard anything from the state. Our contact is on vacation until Monday, so we're going to follow up to just double check, but we're hopeful to get that kicked off. Before we meet next time, if you move this forward, we should have an answer as to, timing and things with that. But this is for us to do the construction component of it. So if you do look at this, there is some contract execution, which we've been already working on, some notice to proceed issuance, pre-construction meeting, shop drawing review. We'll be on site to do full construction review for the storm sewer. So the large pipe underground, we'll make sure that they're installing it properly, bedding it, backfilling it. We do have part-time construction on for the road replacement, so they'll have to come back and pour some curb and patch the road. We don't have to be standing there all day when they're doing that, so kind of keep costs down. We had estimated that we would be there for the restoration, the final punch list to make sure that things were completed and there's no settlement or other issues that have to be addressed. And then we'll do the as-built drawings to update the GIS system. So that's kind of what we would standard do on one of these type of construction projects. This task order, just as a reminder, does not include the grant administration. That was handled by separate task order, and that task order covered all the way through the end of the project. So we're good on all the CBDG requirements, all the federal funding requirements. So we'll have funds in place to do that. We just didn't have anything previously in place to take care of the construction services. And I did forget, by the way, we were going to be doing the construction staking, so to come out and do the layout for the contractor as well. So that was what the task order before you is tonight covering. So any questions about what's included or not included in that?
Anyone? Go ahead, Alder Albright.
So is this going to be considered match for the grant? Yes?
Yeah, it'll be a part of the city's contribution, but
Okay.
This wasn't really a match because it's not the competitive, it's the closed grant.
No, but we can get it counted towards our.
Yes, we'll get it counted.
Any other questions? Is everyone comfortable moving this forward? Seeing lots of nodding heads and at home. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jason. And next up is also Jason for the TAP grant.
Okay, so this one's a little different. If you read the cover memo, Kyle and I were informed by the state that we needed to have the final design done in a couple weeks for this job, which obviously I had not been aware of. And so we thought we had some time due to the SMA. The state had put this under the biennium budget that will wrap up next July. And so we spent, I would say, at least an hour on the phone with the local program manager and the grant program manager to kind of find out, is there a way we can make this work? There's a lot of stuff in here because this is a TAP grant, and there are federal funds involved. I will tell you that there is a lot of work associated with one of these designs, although the design might not seem very difficult. There is a lot of procedural things. I think the sponsor guide is 265 pages of how to do one of these projects. So we have a lot of things that we need to follow. A couple key things that if we're going to move this forward, we had talked to the state about they would revise and push the submittal dates out for us. That would give us a chance to get this done, and I'll be completely honest with you. It's exactly that. It's a chance to get this done. You know, if we run into any hiccups along the way, the dates are probably not reasonable to complete this. But if everything goes well, we should be able to get this done. So they had talked about amending the dates and getting this out. The one option I think that the memo talks about is potentially moving the money into the next biennium budget, but we were told that it's unlikely, very unlikely that they would allow that, just due to the competitive nature of the budget money and the people that are already kind of slotted for the next biennium, because they take all these grants and they kind of divvy them up into biennium budgets. And so to move us out and to move into another biennium would obviously take money away from a project that's already been allocated. So at this point, I tried my best on short notice, and I would say I'm fairly confident. We've read through the sponsor guide. We've got all the scope items involved, but it is pretty aggressive, and I don't know, if we're going to run into any hiccups, because, I mean, we have to send in a lot of environmental documents that need to be approved. The one good thing is some of these same areas were already approved and permitted through the dredging, CDBG close grant. So we're confident some of this is clean and would go really well. But a lot of these areas in the TAP grant aren't included in that project either. So there's some new areas that we'd be dealing with. So we had, included the scope in here to cover everything that was listed in the sponsor guide that would be required from them. I do have probably a little extra time built in here for us to communicate with the local program manager, as we were kind of asked to do. They said that they would want to be meeting very regularly if we're going to get this approved and try and accelerate this to meet the schedule. So I'm confident our scope and fee would get this done. But I want to be honest with you that I don't want to hit a snag somewhere and have you guys lose your grant funding and then ultimately end up paying Rupert Milky a bunch of money to get us to, close, but we don't get the grant. So there is a risk here. So I just want to make you guys fully aware of that. At least that's from the engineering point. I don't want to promise something I can't deliver on, but I think at this point we were all fairly confident that if things go well, this is doable. So Kyle, help me. Does that make sense? Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you get into the environmental, that's really where we were nervous, and I think the DOT staff were nervous. I think there was a missed step there in that they normally notify the region, and in this case, they didn't copy the region on it, so the region wasn't kind of up on this until they asked Jason for the finished design. That'll take months to do. And so, I think there's a big question mark, but even beyond that, we know that there's going to be funding required on the city side to make this happen. We have the grant funds of over $400,000, but we know that there was going to be a share on our side. In 2020, when this was submitted, I think we were thinking $100,000 to $150,000. I think, who knows where it's going to be with the way the bid numbers are coming back. So I think that's the other context you need to keep this in, is if we don't think we're going to have the money to allocate next year of $100,000, $200,000 or more, then this would be wasted money if we don't have the money to complete the project. Because that's the other thing, is once the design happens, we still have to, complete the project within the time frame, and that, I believe, means June 30th.
Right. And then if we decide to move forward with this, we are paying Rupert Milky $77,650, whether or not we get that completed and are able to capitalize on the grant money and then spend the $150K plus on our portion. So we are committing to spend a minimum of $78,000, possibly $250,000, and maybe we'll just spend $78,000 and get nothing, is what's in front of you right now. It's an unfortunate reality of us not being fully aware of the time schedule on this ahead in time to get these items done. But that's the unfortunate reality of where we're at. So what is council's consensus on moving forward, or simply allowing this to, for lack of better terms, die? Mayor Arnold?
Well, I'm wondering, what are the chances if we decide not to move ahead, now? What are the chances that grant money will be available next year, the year after next, that we could take advantage of in a more timely fashion? Or is that hard to know?
I think it's hard to know. I think since we had a successful application, there's a good chance we would be able to polish it up. And the more forthcoming we are with DOT right now, I think it'll bode well for us in the future if we're proactive and say, here's the situation, we want to, give these funds back and apply in a future year. Hopefully we would still score well, but it always depends on your competition because it's limited funds, so.
Thank you, Mayor Arnold. Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Alder Motive.
I can't support taking this kind of risk and spending money and then not being able to fulfill it with the grant. Our budget is too tight. I would really love to have a bike or walking path, but I don't think it's the right time.
Thank you, Alder Motive. So, any other thoughts? We need to come to a consensus on a direction. We're already, unfortunately, behind the ball on getting this work done. So this is something we need to make a decision on. Go ahead.
I agree with Motive. It's not something that we can really afford to take risks on. While there is a good chance that we could get the grant, it was still could go through all this process and get nothing out of it. So until we know exactly what we can cover and what we can't, it's really not worth the risk.
Thank you, Alder Steiner. Alder Reed.
Oh, thank you. My goodness, I am just so disappointed that the needed steps and the miscommunication of timing happened. This would have been so wonderful for our city. But even for myself, I find it too risky for being able to make the time period. I don't think we can do it.
Thank you, Alder Reed. I, for one, agree with the three other alders' sentiments on it. I mean, it is really disappointing that it's not something. I remember when this first came to council, Alder Reed and I were both here. Everyone was really excited about getting this done. I just think, too big of a risk to spend a minimum of $78,000 to start with, and then it just doesn't make financial sense for us, unfortunately, I don't think. Is there anyone that would like to move forward with this? All right, seeing none, then the consensus of the council is to unfortunately not move forward with the TAP grant. All right. Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah, and I appreciate your considering this. As I said before, I'm confident that, there are grant monies available in the future. I know when we talked to the local program coordinator and the grant coordinator, they all said this grant scored very high because it is exactly the type of grant they're looking for. There is a lot of money currently coming down through the federal government that supports these things. And we also were talking, I think, a couple meetings ago just about the real estate component. For some of these lands, we would probably end up modifying this grant slightly anyways to take some of the private residential lands out out that we were not getting support for anyways. So there was some logistical issues on top of what we talked about tonight that was going to weigh into a little bit of this moving forward in the risk. So I do appreciate you guys' consideration of this, but you know, I think it's a good decision, so.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, then next up is item number 9, and that is to discuss the referendum question for the ATV and UTVs. Let's see, let me reorganize here for a second. Oh, I'm organizing things in backwards order today. All right, here we go. So there's a couple questions that Attorney Johnson prepared that are in your packet. We can, of course, go with one of those, or we can come up with a question on our own. Today we did hear from Molly and Jacob and Joe. As far as what we're discussing tonight toward the questions, I think Molly's overall was to remove the word route. And I think that was probably the biggest sentiment between what we have in front of us and what our guest speakers were, was to make sure that it was all city streets and that it wasn't just for routes. So that the, go ahead.
Route is the one word you need to have in your question. The definition, whatever it is that you decide to do, the definition of the path of access is a route. So that's pretty much, that's a statutory definition of the way to get from point A to point B.
So even if they're just driving from their home to the grocery store, that's still technically a route.
Right, you will be, if you decide to go forward with this at some point in the future, you will be designating streets as the UTV route.
Oh, thank you, Attorney Johnson. That makes a big difference on potential questions. And I don't know, I think that is slightly unfortunate because I think even a lot of the people that support this will get that confused. So that is a bit, I think for both people on both sides, that's a confusing word. It was for me, obviously. Well, go ahead, Alder.
I do have a recommendation. So I think actually what the problem is that there's two questions. One, it's designating a route just through town. So that what that means is somebody lives on Water Street, they can't get on Highway 60 or whatever to get out towards, well, no, Highway 16 to go out towards Old Rock or whatever. So instead of having two questions, my recommendation is, should the city of Columbus allow all city streets, unless otherwise posted, to be considered as part of an ATV, UTV route? So then we would have the flexibility to, like, say, if we don't want somebody driving down in front of the city hall, we could mark that as an undesignated street.
Thank you, Alder Albright. I understand the intention behind that. I think that could be slightly misleading to the purpose of the question, because the purpose of the question was to open, or the entire, when we were discussing the ordinance, was to open all city streets. And I think that leaves it in people's minds that we are going to be picking routes. And that was the exact opposite of what all of the people for the ordinance spoke to, I believe. Because that gives more of, we're only going to allow certain streets unless otherwise designated. I think we should keep it simple and keep it so that it is the intention of all streets in the city of Columbus. Go ahead, Alder Reed.
Oh, well, now I'm having to reword it a bit to have the word route in it.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. I guess I'm looking at a question of, just a simple question of, do you support allowing all city streets of Columbus to be open as recreational routes for ATV, UTV travel?
Okay, yeah, I think that's pretty clear to the point. And I apologize to the two alders at home. I realize that I hold my paper over my screen, so I'm not sure if either of you were trying to chime in or not, because I keep mine right here, and that's where you are. Go ahead, Alder Motive.
I had written down this question: do you support the city of Columbus creating an ordinance that would allow ATV, UTV use on legal open road routes within city limits.
On, could you repeat the last part of that, on something road routes? What did you say?
On legal open road routes within city limits.
Legal.
Legal.
Okay, so, I mean, aren't they all legal, I guess?
They would be. I again think that would be a little bit misleading to the intention of the referendum.
Yeah, I guess that kind of threw me a little bit, like, what, okay, anyway, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, I appreciate the input. I think the big thing here is we want to keep it super simple so that we're not misleading and everybody understands it. That's the big thing, is when we have two-part questions, I think that's bad because then there's an either or if we put in words like all legal routes, then people would assume that there are currently legal routes and there are not. So that's, go ahead, Alder Steiner.
I just want to say that I'm all for public opinion on a lot of things, but I really think we should take this off referendum and just move it to the next COW and tweak the ordinance and then go through the passing process. Because this does seem like a waste of time to put out an ordinance and then have to discuss how we had the ordinance set up when we can just set up the ordinance and as legislators move this whole thing along and get past it. It's really a question of, do we trust the people to be safe and responsible for this? And since they came to the city to get this going, we should actually take the charge and do it ourselves to pass this ordinance and get it moving along.
Thank you, Alder Steiner. Did you have any input on what you believe the question should be for the referendum?
Not especially. I mean, all city streets should be available because otherwise you're just limiting certain people from accessing everything. It's just, everyone should be able to get out from their house and go to their area. Otherwise, if you create specific routes, somebody down 2 blocks has to trailer their vehicle, park it here, and then travel through or whichever way. And it's like Molly was saying, it just bottlenecks everything and makes it confusing.
All right, so I think the overall intention would be predominantly the first question in our packets. Maybe we tweak that to even make it a little bit more simple. Maybe by just flipping should the city allow to being should all streets in the city of Columbus be utilized for ATV and UTV routes. Does that make sense? I think if we remove the considered part of a route, it makes it more clear that they would all be utilized. Instead of it sounding, like my only problem with that first question is it sounds like, should the city of Columbus consider whether or not a road is going to be utilized? This is more of, should our roads be utilized? And I want to make sure that is clear on the referendum. That's what we're asking is, should all of our streets be open to ATV, UTV use?
So I just have a quick question. So we're only actually looking for one question, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so we kind of agree that the second one is kind of gone, right? We don't really want that one. We just want to tweak the first one.
I think the second one is a little too confusing.
Right. So Trina, can you say what you said before?
Oh, well, right now I was just going to make it even simpler and just cross out a portion of what's there. So if we go with number 1, should the city of Columbus allow all city streets to be recreational ATV, UTV routes? With or without the word recreation?
I like that better than considered. I think the word considered is a little misleading. It makes it sound like, should we think about doing this? I just want to make sure everyone that's reading the question is understanding the intent.
And the only reason I was adding the word recreation is because we're already allowing, snow trips and, trips to a recycling center with goods.
Right, exactly. UTVs are already allowed for utility purposes. Oh, Alder Motive.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question that Trina proposed. Could someone please repeat it?
Oh, you want to turn your mic on?
Oh, thank you. The latest iteration was, should the city of Columbus allow all city streets to be recreational ATV, UTV routes?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm still of the mind that we should just flip the, should the city of Columbus to be, should all streets, and put the city of, just kind of flip it. So that, but I don't think that's a sticking point for me. I like it that that's more clear. I like that the considered part is out of it because it's more clear of the intent. So, I mean, if that's what people want to go with, like, whatever, we just need to. Mayor Arnold, any?
Yeah, I think that sounds good, and we have, until the end of August to to kind of tweak this, correct?
So I believe if we're utilizing the regular meetings, we'll have August 1st, and then it would, unless we have a special meeting, would need to be on August 16th, approved into the county by August 30th, I believe.
So we should, we could still tweak it a little bit at our regular meeting, but we should have something fairly solid going into what we want so we can get it approved at our next meeting so that it can get on referendum in time. What do you think, Alder Albright? Is that good wording for?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, I think it's concise, it's clear.
It works.
Anyone? Alder Rolke, Alder Motive, any thoughts?
I like the way it is.
Good.
I don't know where to start it from because my packet seems to be missing that page with the verbiage that was written, but I am comfortable with what Trina read.
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like there's a consensus to move the language from Trina's iteration forward. Did anyone write that down well enough that we have it?
She said recreational.
Yeah.
City of Columbus allow all city streets to be utilized for recreational.
You don't need to use that word if you don't want to.
No.
Right, and we could always include or exclude it at a regular meeting. I think for now we can leave it in there and we can always cut it out when we do the final approval. Because that was one of the things that I think it was Jacob mentioned, is he wanted to make it clear that it was, not affecting the current utility use that's already approved in Columbus. But little tweaks like that we can change. All right. Then next up on the agenda is to discuss 2023 budget priorities. Did anyone want to chime in with a budget priority of their own? Alder Albright?
I do. I have a couple questions. So as far as the audit services, obviously that we got to increase because we're already over, right? And because their CPAs are charging more. For insurance, is this health insurance or is this just city insurance that we're at 194%?
So what you're seeing there is the city, again, pays for all of the insurance, and depending on, I'm not sure what page you're looking at, if it's in the expense line, it's most likely like property casualty liability. We pay the bills, and then later on,
and then you divide it up.
We divide it up, and so it's going to come back down from 194% eventually by journal entry.
Okay, and then what is miscellaneous expenditures? Can you define that?
Let's see, what page are you on?
We're on page 1, and it's
Enerpac agreement.
Oh, that's why I recognized it. Okay. And that ends in December.
I do appreciate your questions. This current topic is about budget priorities. Did you have any budget priorities you would like to discuss?
Yeah. I think we need to start planning for stormwater. And I had already talked to Kyle in regards to insurance for employees to maybe potentially look at that because, maybe we could do something different. And then,
how so? What do you mean?
So when I sent an email to him, I posed a couple questions. we pay taxes, you know, could we do a joint employee insurance plan with the school, or can we do something through the state? Is there some way that we can get better insurance for our employees that maybe doesn't cost as much?
Okay.
And then one of the other things, and I don't know if you can answer this, as far as so we did a little bit of a tweak on the fees last year. I'm wondering if that might not be something that we might want to look at again.
I'm sorry, Shelley, we did a tweak on
Fees.
Oh, fees, okay.
To bring them up to like a more market value.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that should probably be part of our budget process this fall, is going over all of the ratepayer fees and things for different things. Because the last time we increased fees, and Trina, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of it we increased not as much as we thought maybe the going rate was, but we didn't want to have a massive increase all at once. So I think fee schedules for a lot of services in Columbus, that should probably be a regular part of our budget discussion, because we are behind the times, and that does definitely affect a lot of things. Go ahead, Alder Motive.
I would like to see a focus in this budget on better employee compensation, benefits, and retention programs. We've made the decisions we need to so that we can go forward with the compensation study, and I want to be able to support any increases that they recommend.
Thank you, Alder Motive. I agree. I think that's a direction that the city's trying to go, and to reinforce that, that's a great thing. Our budget is tight, and trying to focus on important roles like our city staff is something that we could perhaps feasibly do, whereas there's a lot of other things we want to do that, unfortunately. Go ahead, Alder Reed.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I also wanted us to consider improved, worker compensation. Something else, just to keep in mind, I also want to see what our plan is for city buildings. I know that there are a number of roofs that are having more and more issues, and just don't want that to get lost or forgotten about, and then get some surprises.
Thank you, Alder Reed. And I believe that's something Kyle's been working on, is more of a capital improvement plan for our buildings and things. So keeping that going and trying to just staying on top of it. I think historically, at some times, Columbus has kind of dropped the ball a little bit, and that's part of the reason we're in the situation we are now with our buildings and our streets and things of that nature. So making sure keeping that a priority, I think that's a great thing. Let's see, did Alder Rolke, did you have you don't have to chime in. I just want to make sure I'm not missing you, because I cover up my screen a lot in.
No.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, any thoughts? I think those are really good directions they're very much in the now of what the council has been working on in the past year, is, trying to figure out our stormwater system and ensuring that we are adequately compensating our employees, focusing on retention. Those are struggles that we've had in the past, and I think those are good things to focus on and try to go forward. My only other thought is potentially earmarking some funds to go along with whatever projects we may choose for the ARPA funds, because it's like $450 some odd $1,000, I think. It sounds like a lot of money, but it doesn't go very far I don't want us to pigeonhole small projects only for that. I want us to, we have a great opportunity of these funds, so I want to make the most of it and see trying to put some other funds toward whatever project we possibly choose. It's hard to say and give a super good direction, but I think we should be cognizant that we are going to be utilizing those funds, and $450,000 unfortunately does not pay for much of anything nowadays. So keeping in mind that we are likely going to have to put in, probably several $100,000 into whatever project we choose is going to be important in our budget, so that that money is available when we move forward with whatever project we decide to move forward with. Otherwise, we're going to be scrambling to find money to do whatever project, and then we just use funds on something that we didn't need as much because we could afford it.
So I just have a quick question that you reminded me of something. So once we do this funding that we approved tonight, Kyle, what percentage are we at as far as our debt capacity?
We're going to have plenty of capacity because we are, I think we're at like 37, 38%
Right, that's what
right
I
now.
thought.
So we're still going to be well within our policy and definitely well within the state statutory limit.
And we could have potentially some room if we needed it.
Yeah, we could do another borrowing, but we likely wouldn't until later next year potentially, but we could plan that too and front the money and refund it later if we had projects to do, so.
Right, yeah, and Columbus, I mean, that is one thing that we have done well historically, is keeping well under our debt capacity. Keep in mind, raising that does come from somewhere, which is called taxes. So, but that's, a discussion for another time when we decide that that's more of a budget discussion. Go ahead,
I guess
Arnold.
the one thing that I want us to be aware of is that I don't want to see us cut any of the, I think Kyle refers to them as the quality of life services, the rec department, the library, the senior center, the pool. I think those are all really important. They bring families here, and so I'm a big supporter of all those different departments.
Thank you, Mayor Arnold. I do agree. I think that's important to say. And I think that's kind of the underlying of what everyone up here is saying, because we're not making big asks of we want, all of this done, because we all realize we can't. So trying to keep all of our services and everything running, and trying to keep our employees adequately compensated and happy and retain them while trying to tackle at least some of the things like stormwater and things of that nature is the best we can do, and those are all, I think, realistic goals. So I appreciate everyone's input on this tonight. Were there any other thoughts? No. All right, then with that, I will take a motion to convene to closed session per 19.851E. Deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to discuss the potential sale of the property within the city of Columbus.
I move we go to closed session.
Alder Motive will second.
I have a motion from Mayor Arnold and a second from Alder Motive to convene to closed session per 19.851E. Pat, could you take a roll call?
Arnold?
Yes.
Gray?
Aye.
Motive?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Rolke?
Aye.
Steiner?
Aye.
Albright?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. We will now be convening to closed session. We won't be coming back on the air tonight. So thank you all for watching. Have a great night.